Hey everyone, and welcome back to the podcast here on the Biz English channel. We are so glad you're tuning in with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great to be back here.
Before we get into the meat of it, you know the drill. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, drop a like on this video, and get ready to share your opinions in the comment section down below.
Definitely getting those comments today. We've got a really interesting topic on the table.
We really do. So our mission today is unpacking the 5 essential communication habits of elite leaders. Basically, we want to help you upgrade your communication style so you're actually seen as powerful, respected, and, confident.
Right, because, true authority isn't just about being the loudest person in the room anymore. That is such an outdated way of looking at it.
Oh, totally. We always picture that one guy with the booming voice just dominating the boardroom, interrupting everyone.
Exactly. But it's really about making your words match your ambition. True influence is actually surprisingly subtle.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Because to understand how a leader acts in a high-stress situation, you first have to look at the literal words coming out of your mouth.
Yeah, and this is where a lot of people trip up right out of the gate. Speaking to lead, not just to be liked.
Right, which means abandoning these tiny little qualifiers we all use, like saying, I think, or I feel. And honestly, I push back on this a little bit.
You do. How come?
Well, isn't saying something like, I think we should try this, just a way of being polite? Like, it feels collaborative to me, rather than just dictating terms to the team.
What's fascinating here is the massive gap between what you intend to do and what the room actually interprets. You want to sound polite, but to the human brain, those words act as microscopic signals of uncertainty.
Wait, really? Just from adding I think to the front of a sentence?
Yeah, they don't signal collaboration at all. They signal a lack of conviction. Elite leaders just operate from this mindset of, I am a leader, even if they don't have the official title yet.
So by saying, I feel like this marketing strategy might work, you're actually shooting your credibility in the foot.
Exactly. Think about the cognitive linguistics of it. You're putting your internal emotional state, your feelings, at the dead center of the proposition.
Oh, I see.
So subconsciously, the room hears, I'm not totally sure about this data, so I'm relying on my intuition, and please don't hold me accountable if it fails.
Oh, wow. It's literally a built-in safety net.
Right. It acts as a defensive posture.
So it's a shield to protect our ego just in case the idea gets shot down by the boss.
Precisely. But a true leader knows their point of view is the exact reason they're sitting at the table in the first place.
But here's the friction, though. If I completely strip away I think and I feel, how do I state my case without sounding incredibly arrogant?
The trick isn't to replace I feel with I demand. The trick is to remove yourself from the statement entirely.
What do you mean?
So instead of saying, I think we should try this new software, you swap it to, the best path forward is pivoting to this software.
Oh, wow. Okay, I hear the difference there. It sounds so much more objective.
Right. Or instead of, I feel like this might work, you simply state, here's the strategy that will get us this result.
That completely takes the ego out of the equation. It's about the work, not about you.
Exactly. It instantly removes the hesitation and skyrockets your credibility in the room.
And actually, pulling the self and specifically pulling the feelings out of the equation leads right into our second major habit today.
Yes, the logic over emotion rule. This is crucial.
Right. There is this powerful mantra we found, which is high emotion, low intelligence.
It's a phenomenal principle to keep in your back pocket.
It's also a pretty brutal phrase, honestly. Like, humans aren't robots. If a client is actively screaming at me, my physiological response is to get defensive. My heart rate spikes.
Sure, of course it does.
So are these elite leaders just like sociopaths who don't feel anything?
Not at all. They feel the exact same physiological spike that you do. But this raises a really important point about cognitive load.
Okay, tell me more about that.
When you experience that spike, when your amygdala fires up because of a perceived threat, like a screaming client, your prefrontal cortex gets actively suppressed.
The logic part of the brain.
Right. The part that handles logic and complex problem solving. So you literally become less capable of intelligent thought when you're flooded with emotion.
Hence, high emotion, low intelligence. So the people who are constantly outraged at the office, the ones writing passive-aggressive emails.
They are operating with a suppressed logic center. That's why highly emotional people rarely have successful business relationships. They're entirely reactive.
So effective leaders just trust their decision-making process because it isn't being jerked around by someone else's emotional outburst.
Exactly. They view an outburst from a colleague not as a threat, but as data.
There's this brilliant visual analogy for this, the concept of the blade of grass versus the toothpick.
Oh, I absolutely love this model. It's such a perfect visual.
So imagine a wooden toothpick standing vertically on a table, and a heavy rock, which represents, a massive crisis or corporate pressure, falls right onto the tip of that toothpick. What happens?
Well, the toothpick just snaps. Right.
Hmm.
Because it's completely rigid.
Right. It's hard, tense, and frail. It tries to hold its ground and just shatters. And that is the professional who responds to emotion with more emotion.
They try to stand their ground and argue back, and they end up snapping under the pressure.
Exactly. Now, replace the toothpick with a single horizontal blade of grass. When that same heavy rock of pressure falls, the grass doesn't try to stop the rock.
It just bends.
It bends. It yields to the pressure, it lets the rock pass right by, and then bounces back up to its original shape.
So bending like the grass doesn't mean you're surrendering or agreeing with the person screaming at you. Far from it.
Right. It means you just refuse to get emotionally entangled in their chaos.
You validate that they're upset, process the actual data buried in their rant, and respond without any of that tense rigidity.
Actually, we want to hear from you right now. When things get heated at work, do you naturally bend like a blade of grass, or do you snap like a toothpick?
That is a really good question for everyone. Be honest with yourselves.
Yeah, pause the video, go down to the comments section, and tell us your honest answer. And while you're down there, make sure you're subscribed to the Biz English channel.
Definitely get in those comments. I'm really curious to see what people say about this one.
Me too. Okay, so moving on to the third habit. Once you've mastered that emotional control and you aren't wasting energy being angry, how do you make sure people actually listen when you do speak?
Well, this is all about intentionality. Great leaders don't speak more. They speak with weight.
It reminds me of having way too many open tabs on a web browser. Have you ever done that? Where your computer's fan sounds like a jet engine.
Oh, all the time. Everything slows down to an absolute crawl.
Right, because you have like 60 tabs open, and most of them are just sitting there unused, draining your computer's RAM for absolutely no reason.
It's a massive drag on the operating system.
Exactly. And sitting in a meeting without a clear purpose is exactly like being one of those unused browser tabs.
Yeah.
You're just draining your own mental energy to go through the motion.
But that is highly accurate comparison. Elite communicators are incredibly protective of their presence.
So if you don't have a clear reason for being in a room, you should just leave.
Ideally, yes.
Yeah.
But let's look at the reality of corporate life. Sometimes you are forced to be in a meeting. Your boss just says, I need you in this briefing.
Right. You don't always get to leave just because you don't have a presentation to give.
True. But even if you're required to be there, you still need a target.
What kind of target?
Well, maybe your target is aggressive observation. Maybe you want to analyze the dynamic between two warring departments. Or find one critical flaw in the proposed timeline.
Oh, I see. What destroys your authority is just walking in to be a warm body? Or worse, sitting in the back, subtly answering emails on your phone.
Oh, that is the worst. Because that broadcasts to the entire room that you aren't essential to the conversation. It signals that you are just an accessory.
But, having a target doesn't necessarily mean you have all the answers, which is a paradox that caught me off guard.
Right. The expectation that a leader has to sit on a high mountain and dictate answers is a complete myth.
True authority often comes from playing a different role entirely. The question master.
Exactly. The best leaders view themselves as professional problem solvers. And solving a messy business problem is a lot like trying to untangle a delicate, knotted gold necklace.
Oh, that is the most frustrating task on earth. You can't just yank the chain apart or you'll break the whole thing.
It requires immense patience. You have to isolate one loop, pull it slightly to see what else moves, and gather information about the knot.
And in a corporate setting, you unknot these issues by asking powerful, strategic questions.
Right, to gather the missing information.
There's this great childhood anecdote about this called the question game.
Oh, right. Let's hear it.
So there's this young girl who was terrified of small talk. So at social functions, her parents would force her to go up to some guy, let's call him Mr. Bob.
Just threw her to the wolves.
Literally. They'd say, go talk to Mr. Bob and don't come back until you've asked him 3 distinct questions. So she'd go over completely terrified and ask, does your son like baseball?
And he'd say yes?
Right. And then she would freeze. She didn't know how to bridge to question number 2. She'd panic, run back to her mom, get coached, and go back out.
It sounds kind of traumatic, honestly, but it's brilliant exposure therapy.
It is, because that childhood terror maps perfectly onto adult corporate anxiety. We assume we need to prove how smart we are by rapid-firing answers.
When really, elite leaders know they prove their value by uncovering the right data points everyone else missed.
Here is where it gets really interesting, though. You have to upgrade your questions. Because if you ask a weak, fluffy question, you get a weak, fluffy answer.
We need to give people the specific upgrades here. What does a weak question look like?
The most common one is just, what do you think?
Which is dangerous, because as we established earlier, asking what someone thinks or feels just invites emotion back into the room.
Right, it invites the ego. So instead you swap, what do you think, for what data supports this decision?
That is such a good swap. It forces a completely different cognitive process from the person answering. They can't just vent. They have to produce evidence.
Let's do another one. Instead of saying, how are things going with the project, you ask, what is the single biggest bottleneck you are facing right now?
Exactly. Or when a mistake happens, instead of asking, can we fix this? You ask, what would it take to ensure this never happens again?
It's forensic. You're probing for the exact source of the pain. And hey, if you are finding these exact phrase swaps helpful, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to support the channel.
They're absolute game changers. But, eventually you gather all that data, you untangle the necklace, and then you hit the final hurdle.
Delivering the verdict. Habit number 5, landing the plane.
Yes. Stop oversharing and embody that confidence.
So what does this all mean? Why do people do all this incredible work and then sabotage themselves right at the finish line by over-explaining?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture of human psychology, over-explaining is almost always a desperate plea for validation.
Because delivering a final verdict creates tension in the room, and humans naturally hate tension.
We hate it. We want people to smile and nod and validate that we're good, reasonable people.
So a leader will deliver the decision, feel that heavy silence, and instead of letting it sit, they just panic.
They keep talking, they justify the choice, they soften the blow, they offer unnecessary compliments.
It dilutes the power of the message entirely. There's that deeply uncomfortable story about the 23-year-old manager.
Oh no, the firing story. That is painful to think about.
She had to fire someone for the first time. She did all the right prep work. She removed her emotions. She had her data. But when the employee sat down...
The tension was too much for her to handle.
Exactly. Instead of just delivering the clean, professional verdict, she started over-explaining to fill the silence.
A classic anxiety response.
She started telling the employee how talented they were, how much she personally liked them. She softened the blow so aggressively that she accurately turned a termination meeting into a nice little touch point.
Wait, did the employee even know they were fired?
No, they walked out thinking they just had a lovely mentoring session.
Oh, that is brutal.
The manager literally had to pull them back in a week later and redo the firing because she never actually landed the plane.
That is the ultimate cautionary tale. It's the airplane analogy. You're inches from the tarmac, and instead of just touching down, you pull back and circle the runway again.
Restating the exact same point from a slightly different angle. It makes everyone listening deeply anxious because we just want the flight to end.
When you know what you're going to say, you must deliver it with grace, deliver it with directness, and then, and this is the hard part, you must close your mouth and tolerate the silence.
You don't need the room to validate your sentence.
Exactly. And as we wrap up this profile, it's clear this isn't just about the vocabulary you use. The physical manifestation is just as crucial.
Right, your body language. You can use all the right words, but if your body signals submission, the words lose their weight.
Watch successful people. They sit up straight, they put their shoulders back, they keep their hands in a specific section, and they do not fidget.
No spinning their rings or tapping their pens.
Fidgeting bleeds energy. And crucially, they do not drop their vocal volume at the end of a sentence.
Oh, the whispering. Why do we do that? We start a sentence strong and then sort of trail off into a whisper.
It's an evolutionary submissive signal. When you state an opinion that might cause conflict, part of your brain gets scared of being attacked.
So we instinctively drop our volume to make the statement seem less threatening.
Right. Your body's trying to hide your own opinion. To combat this, you have to use a powerful internal anchor.
Which is?
When you catch yourself dropping your volume or hunching your shoulders, you mentally pause and tell yourself, future me doesn't communicate like this.
Future me doesn't communicate like this.
Oh,
that is
okay.
brilliant. It separates who you are in this anxious moment from the leader you are building yourself to be.
It interrupts the nervous system. It reminds you to project your voice, deliver the message clearly, and then land the plane.
Let's do a quick recap of the 5 steps we covered on the channel today.
Let's run through them.
First, speaking to lead by ditching the I think and I feel qualifiers. Second, ditching emotion for logic, bending like the blade of grass.
Third is having a target in every room, treating your presence as a finite resource.
Fourth, asking strategic questions to untangle the data, like the question master. And fifth, keeping it direct without oversharing, landing the plane.
It's a challenging transition, but mastering even one of these drastically alters how people perceive your competence. But I do want to leave everyone listening with a final, slightly provocative thought.
I am ready for it. Let's hear it.
Think back to the last truly high-stakes conversation you had at work, a heated meeting or a negotiation. If someone had a hidden camera and secretly recorded your side of that interaction, which of these habits would you be most guilty of violating?
Oh, wow. That is a tough lens to view ourselves through.
Were you acting as a rigid toothpick? Were you circling the runway, terrified to stop talking? Identify your specific friction point, and then ask yourself, what would happen to your career trajectory if you permanently fixed that single vulnerability tomorrow?
That is an incredible thought to end on. You don't need a megaphone to command a room. You just need the quiet, mechanical precision of an elite communicator.
Exactly.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us for this discussion on the Biz English channel.
It was a pleasure being here.
Please remember to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and keep the conversation going in the comments. We love reading what you guys think. We'll catch you on the next one.